Hey everybody, this is Attila with Scraping Hub, and today we will have a Q&A session about web scraping at scale and using proxies. And I'm here with our head of development, Akshay. Hey Akshay, thanks for being here.
Yeah, Attila.
So let's just jump into it. When you're scraping the web, there are many parts in the whole project. What is the biggest challenge when it comes to web data extraction at scale?
It's so, everyone who's been in scraping knows that, they have to deal with a bunch of different things, right from inconsistent website layouts that break extraction logic, badly written HTML. If you're scraping at scale, you need a robust crawling infrastructure. And, you need to take into account spider design, caching, monitoring, alerting, and whatnot. But over the last couple of years, I would say the single most important challenge has been to actually acquire that data in the first place. And that's due to the antibots or the underlying technologies that websites use to protect their data. And one has to go through a lot of hoops in order to get around these so-called antibots. So I would definitely put that as the biggest challenge.
And with antibots, it's like usually when people try to get around these, they focus on proxies and the importance of proxies. But it's also important to, like how you actually scrape and what's the logic, how you use those proxies. So which one do you think is more important when scaling up, the proxies themselves or the logic of the scraper?
I think it's fairly intertwined. You need to have good quality proxies. Of course, that goes without saying. If you use free proxies that are blacklisted by the website due to all sort of probably it might have been involved in denial of service attacks of sorts. So if you're going to use proxies of that sort, regardless of what you do at the scraper side in the spider, it's not going to work for you. So proxies are important, but so is the logic of circumventing it. Given the fact that a lot of the logic has moved from the server-side validation that websites used to do in the past to actual client-side validation, where they look at the JavaScript and browser fingerprinting, it is really important to ensure that the logic of the scraper is in tune with the requirement of the website. So I would say it really is dependent on the target website. Sometimes bad proxies combined with real good circumvention code can work, but in most times I would say both of these are important in equal parts. Decent proxies combined with good crawling knowledge and a good crawl strategy, for sure.
And let's say you have a web scraping project, and you start experiencing issues, maybe because you want to scale up, or maybe because the target website started to use some kind of antibot. So, and you experience blocks, you get more and more unsuccessful requests. So what are the first steps to get around the blocks and to get around this issue?
Right. The first step before starting a scraping project is to understand what is a polite crawl. So you need to understand which website you're scraping, and shape your crawl so that it does not exceed the amount of resources the website has. When I say exceed resources, it should be well under the total number of users that a website has infrastructure to successfully serve. So one has to make that determination before they even start the crawl. You need to be as polite as possible. Because you've got to remember that antibots and all of these mechanisms are meant not only for scrapers, but primarily for those who abuse the website. And we as scrapers shouldn't be abusing the website in the first place. So that would go a long way in ensuring that you're not met with unsuccessful requests. With that out of the way, there are a few things that you can look at. I think the first and foremost thing would be to try and look at the headers that you're using. They do need to mimic real world browsers. Thereafter, you need to see if the website has employed any sort of geo-blocking, that many times a CDN might be blocking requests from a specific region. So you need to then use region-specific proxies. There may be times where you need to employ residential proxies. I'm sure you're going to be asking me about that next, but residential proxies may be useful in certain situations where websites block data center proxies. Then it comes down to crawl strategy. One cannot, hit websites in certain protected endpoints, which are meant. There are a lot of AJAX endpoints which websites tend to expose. So if you're trying to hit that, or if you're trying to hit mobile endpoints, one should, be very careful before doing those things. So it's important to fine tune your crawl strategy and try to be as organic as you possibly can be. Follow the sitemap, of course. Thereafter, the next step would be many times you might start off getting a few whitelisted sessions. Hence, it's really important to leverage those. So you need to have a good cookie handling and a session management strategy so that you can use these whitelisted sessions. And finally, I think it would be JavaScript challenges. You need to be able to handle most of the websites these days tend to vigorously check for browser fingerprints, and they employ JavaScript in a big way. So you need to handle those challenges. Your infrastructure needs to be geared towards doing that. So I would say these are the 5 or 6 things which one needs to take into consideration once they tend to encounter unsuccessful requests.
Right. So sometimes when, let's say you're doing everything right, you're being polite, you're using some of the techniques you mentioned, but still the website might think that you are a bot, and so it shows you a captcha. And what is the best way, or even is there a way to solve captchas when you're scraping, or how to handle captchas?
Yeah, the thing about a captcha is that, again, first thing is you should ensure that you don't get a captcha. That you can do that by scraping politely. You could use regional proxies, or you could change the type of proxies you use. Also, server-side validation. Many times captchas are a result of you not being able to solve the JavaScript challenge that the website poses. So if you're able to handle JavaScript as well, therefore the chances of captchas keep reducing. But in spite of you having done all of these things and you still get captchas, then either you use third-party services, or if it's an easy captcha, you could spin a homegrown solution to solve it. So first step always is to try and avoid getting the captcha using a bunch of techniques that we just mentioned. But if you do get a captcha, you can employ third-party services to solve the captcha. At the same time, if it is a simple text captcha, you might be able to create a quick solution to get around that as well.
Right. You mentioned residential proxies. And when it comes to web scraping, I believe that the 2 types of proxies that are really popular are data center proxies and residential proxies. Can you describe what are the main differences between data center and residential proxies in the context of web data extraction?
Right. So as data center proxies, as the name goes, data center proxies are derived from huge data center providers, and you can acquire proxies from such companies and use that for scraping. The thing with data center proxies is it's acquired from companies as opposed to end users. So a lot of the regulations such as GDPR, etc., you're compliant to that in most cases. Residential proxies on their own can be split into 2 different parts. One is static residential proxies. These are proxies that are derived from ISPs, and rotating residential proxies that are derived from end users. So there are a bunch of providers out there who actually harvest end user IPs, either by exposing a mobile SDK in several apps. So apps tend to, at times employ these mobile SDKs to ensure that user experience is not degraded by advertisements. As a result, the user IP is used by these residential IP providers for diverting requests through them. certain providers, residential providers, also use Chrome extensions and also use desktop applications, which are used for sharing computational power across the grid. So there are several different techniques which residential providers use, and using this technique, what you get is a rotating IP. So these IPs are not persistent. Uh, so if you're going to use it for situations where you need to manage sessions, etc., residential proxies of the rotating kind may not be as useful. But yeah, this is the major difference. Data center derived from data center providers, while residential proxies are derived from a bunch of different sources, ISPs as well as end users.
Right. And I know it's really up to the website, but generally speaking, data center proxies or residential proxies are better for web scraping.
Right. Sorry, you mean which is better, residential proxies or data center proxies? Is it?
Yeah. Which is better? And like I'm guessing it's up to the websites. But do you have some kind of I don't know, rule of thumb or something like that when it comes to choosing which one to use? And let's say we use them correctly, we manage the proxies correctly.
Right. So it's horses for courses, as you said, right? Data center proxies are fairly versatile. If you use them correctly, you've got dedicated data center proxies. They're pretty cheap. You can use them for long-lived sessions because they're yours. You're not dependent on an end user really for them to remain connected to the grid. So I would say data center proxies are fairly reliable and are good for most use cases if you manage them well, by handling JavaScript challenges, having ability to manage captchas and all of that. But there are certain situations where certain antibots tend to block data center proxies. Entire known addressable ranges of Google, Amazon, web services, etc., could be blocked, and also those of certain data center proxies as well. So in that situation, you would have to employ residential proxies. So again, it'll be up to you to decide which ones to use, static residential or rotating. If you're confident of managing the spider code, being able to manage the requests in a way that you crawl politely and have a decent crawl strategy, then static residential proxies can be very versatile because they're long-lived and you can use them for session management. However, if you're not going to be doing all that, then rotating IPs are the solution because of the fact that they're ubiquitous and it's fairly difficult to block them by any website out there. So, yeah, that's how you decide which ones to use.
When you say rotating IPs, you mean rotating data center IPs?
I mean rotating residential IPs.
Oh, okay. Cool. So you mentioned a lot of things, and it looks like for someone who is new to this topic, it can be really challenging to, see through the challenges of web scraping and managing proxies. It can, I feel like it can look really complex, and many people, I believe, don't want to deal with it in-house. They don't want to get bogged down in the technical details of managing proxies, or just they want a simpler solution when it comes to proxies. So for these people, what factors do you think they should look at when choosing a proxy solution, or someone who provides proxies, or some kind of proxy solution? What factors should they look at?
So in terms of the solution, as you said, as we've discussed here, there's so many different ways in which in which the websites tend to block a user. And it's really important for us not to be bogged down and to use a provider that has both a good quality and good quantity of proxies that are spread across different regions. Along with that, the provider needs to have certain batteries included, maybe TLS fingerprinting or TCP/IP fingerprinting, header profiles, browser profiles, so that requests that you send are not caught out because of the fingerprints and headers. This combined with the fact that success ratio against the target website is really important. So if you can trial those proxies beforehand, you can trial the provider beforehand, that would be really useful. There's nothing better than actually putting it to use. But all of that combined, a provider that can also, what's a bonus is a provider can give you something where captchas are handled seamlessly, and all you need to worry is about sending a request and don't really get down to the proxy level detail. If you can have such a provider, then that's the best situation. And on top of that would be, of course, GDPR compliance. If you're a company that's looking out for source IPs being sourced responsibly, it's really important to get a genuine and a GDPR compliant partner. So, yep, I would say all of these are important. And a plug there, Attila, is that, as we said, it takes a lot of effort to build all of this infrastructure to crawl, and it's so much easier for you to simply send a request, not worry about proxies. So this has been something that we've been working on internally, and there'll be some good news, hopefully, that we will share with you in the same space.
Yeah, right. I totally agree. I think, for many companies, web scraping is just a way to get data. And that's what they really care about, getting high quality data. And getting bogged down with the technical details of proxies and the different challenges we discussed is really not a good use of time for many companies, I feel like. So, yeah, I think just sending a request with your scraper, getting a successful request back is the way to go, and people should look at solutions that make it easy for them to just not deal with really any proxies. Just send a request, get a successful request back, because that's what people really care about.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you, Akshay. We covered a lot of topics. If you guys have more questions about web scraping at scale and proxies, you can leave them in the comment section. See you in the next video. Thank you, Akshay.